Yo, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with another special edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, and we're sticking with football here. You may have thought, hey, Carson might talk about the Raekwon Battle waiver situation, but I'm still going to let that kind of play out. But another story that I want to talk about, and this is what's gotten me a little bit frustrated and pumped with some of a faction of fans out of Mountaineer Nation, and it's perpetuated by some publications, but most notably the one that's the conspiracy publication that you see across social media, just planting things out there all the time just to rile people up. And it's this article that I keep seeing and pop up week in and week out when a certain football team, Jacksonville State, wins games. And it's this insane, asinine idea of bringing back West Virginia's old football coach Rich Rodriguez to replace head coach Neil Brown. And I'll break it down for people who want to understand my rationale reasons why. And I'll break it down into four categories for you. Is first and foremost, does everyone just forget the year 2007? I mean, for some of the younger fans out there, kids who might be in school now, I'm totally aware that the events that happened most pertaining to Rich Rodriguez was 16 years ago. So most kids who in college were, very young infants, toddlers at the time. But even some of the older folks, my age or older, who want to bring back Rich Rodriguez. Do you remember in 2007 that December 1st, 2007 game against the Pitt Panthers? I'll go to my grave thinking to myself that Rich Rodriguez overturning how many of Calvin McGee's play calls that Rich Rodriguez threw that game intentionally so that he could leave the Mountaineers post and take the open position up at Michigan. He was always thinking of himself of going to the NFL, so he thought of his way to get there was to go to the Michigan Wolverines. And we remember how the year before, how he almost took the Alabama job. Instead, Alabama, passing to go for Nick Saban, West Virginia. And I know the back and forth. I've heard it all, from many of people. Rich's interviews with Pat McAfee most recently, I think within the last year or so, and the things that have come out about how the athletic department and the university itself didn't fulfill promises that it made to Rich Rodriguez, paying assistant coaches, facilities, yada, 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 yada. But the way in which he left this program, the golden child of playing for this Mountaineer program and taking over the torch from Don Nehlen, the greatest coach in West Virginia football history, taking them through a couple mediocre to above average seasons, having them in the national rankings, but then exploding onto the scene in 2005 with Pat White and Steve Slayton, getting them to the last game of the season against that Pitt Panthers team, and then you lose that game, and then in the dead of night leave and head off to Michigan and sayonara West Virginia. That is a wound that has cut deep still to this day that is not fully healed, and was only, I feel like the pain and PTSD that is hung over this program since that day has never gone away. It only exacerbated, I feel like, whenever Dana Holgorsen left for Houston, but there's just this constant cloud over the program. And I think it's part of the Bobby Bowden curse, which I'll make on another video at some point in time, maybe in the winter or something. I feel like this West Virginia program's cursed. But the way that he just basically spit in the face of Mountaineer Nation and saying that, I'm better than West Virginia, of going to greener pastures in the Big Ten and changing that Michigan program over to a spread offense, and again, all in pursuits of coaching in the NFL, that was so Judas-like, Brutus-like, just stabbing your you thought if he would have stuck around after 2007 with another year, Pat White, who knows if Steve Slayton goes pro, or who knows, maybe he brings in Terrell Pryor, the nation's number one recruit, to lead his spread offense into the later 2000s years. Who's to say where this program would be now? So he just dumped the program, and right they were like, at the top of the climb, up the mountain, to use a Neil Brown phrase, but up the top of the slope of the roller coaster, and just left you high and dry. So why in the world? I feel as if this is like for someone who's been through an abusive relationship, and you're just come crawling back to the person who's put you through hell. I mean, why? Why would you do that to yourself? And like, this is my second point, is he's not an innovative mind of college football anymore like he was in the early 2000s. And I'll give him a lot of credit, like same him and Chip Kelly, in the way that they were really like, I feel like the godfathers of the spread offense, the spread read option, run with a quarterback type of offense with Pat White, the best I feel like to ever do it. He's not that anymore. Everybody does that. Everybody runs the spread, and now it's evolved, I feel like, over the last 10 years with the run-pass RPO option. So other teams, I feel like I feel like it came from the Big 12 with like Art Briles and also everything that TCU was doing during those like early 2000s days. West Virginia with Dana Holgorsen included, I feel like, as part of that argument, that conversation with Mike Leach at Texas Tech, and then, going up to Washington State and Mississippi State, is like everybody now runs the RPO. Even LSU and Alabama, who were for decades power run, traditional power I teams, pro sets, and now everybody runs the RPO. So what does Rich Rodriguez bring to the table that not any other kind of a coaches, like some of the ones that I've called for in previous videos, like a Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, or a Jonathan Smith out at Oregon State, or maybe even a Kurt Signetti down at James Madison? Like, what does Rich Rodriguez bring to this program other than like the nostalgia and the winning of old? It's not like he has some secret ingredient that made him the hottest coach in the country back in the mid to late 2000s, because he had that spread read option attack with Pat White that was going viral alongside Oregon across college football. So there's nothing from an on the field type of standpoint that I think that that so many other coaches across the country, if you were to fire Neil Brown and bring in a new coach, that what does Rich Rodriguez give you? Third and foremost, and why he's such a liability, is because the dude is a scumbag. There's enough off-the-record conversations that I've heard from Mountaineer fans and people down in Morgantown and stuff, and that he was just like, for one, he was a jerk, and two, he was like, extramarital affairs he's even admitted to, and I think like that's even post his West Virginia days. Then, I don't know what he was, if he kept his nose clean or whatever at Michigan, but then he goes down to Arizona and he's fired for those sexual harassment allegations. So why do you want to bring this kind of like slimy, seedy guy back into your athletic department if you're trying to? I mean, I guess if it's like when West Virginia went with Dana Holgorsen, who was very much the opposite of, old and family like atmosphere and love of West Virginia, like Bill Stewart was, and then Dana leaving, and then you bring in the opposite of Dana in Neil Brown, and like, I guess to bring back Rich Rodriguez, the opposite of Neil Brown. So I mean, like, who knows in that regard? But it's just like you're just asking, I feel like, for problems, and where it's going to come loudest and like proudest from is from this fan base. You thought it was ugly this past summer with everything that went through with Bob Huggins, and still how many in the fan base would like love to bring him back. Do you know how many people, and I know it's a very large percentage, like myself and my dad included, and everybody who's like associated with me, friends and family, hate Rich Rodriguez, still recognize him for the snake in the grass that he was from what he did in 2007. And I know he's tried to come back into the good graces, doing the interviews with McAfee. Like, if you Google Rich Rodriguez, Neil Brown, there's a picture from what some sort of an event it looks like. So And like I know, I think he's even gone on record as saying like he, he still thinks fondly of West Virginia and all these things, but those bridges are burned, man. Like you better hope that you got a lot of wood or a lot of concrete or something to repair some of those bridges, because you're starting from nothing. You burned that in 2007. And I don't think that 16 years, I know time heals all, but 16 years still doesn't feel like that long ago. The sins are not necessarily forgiven by a majority, I feel like, of this fan base. So bringing up this across social media, if you're just trying to stir the pot and you're just trying to get clicks and engagement and all that kind of jazz, like, okay, I get you. I understand what you're trying to go for. You're trying to create controversy, and that's, I feel like, what social media is bantering, arguing back and forth. But in reality, and that's what I like to deal is in reality, that is such a dumb idea. Terrible idea. For those main 4 reasons right there. Everything that he did in 2007, which is end all be all, I feel like, for this argument. Number 2, he's not any big deal of a coach anymore. He's just another guy out there. So it's not like you're hiring the next up-and-coming innovator of college football. No offensive genius guru. Everyone does exactly what he was the golden child for 20 years ago. He's a scumbag. And 4, you're just going to set this fan base on fire. I don't know where these reports are coming from about big-time donors who, have all the support to bring him back. And, I get it. West Virginia as a university it's well reported in, $45 million in the hole as a university. And to pay for Neil Brown's buyout, and the rest of the coaching staff is probably going to be in the ballpark, in total cost with everything, including with the assistants, somewhere close to $15 million or something. But, you got that money back already in Texas, Oklahoma, leaving the Big 12 Conference a year early, and then it's the money that you saved from Huggins' salary and just paying Josh Eilert a little over $1 million and change. So why would this donor be? And so that's the thing, saying that you could get Rich Rodriguez necessarily on the cheap, paying him twice as much as what he got paid at Jacksonville State, 1.6. What are we even talking about at that point in time? This program, I said in my video preview video for Oklahoma State, is trying to prove itself to be one of the power players in the next iteration of this Big 12 conference, with Utah coming in, who's going to be right there up the top, with Oklahoma State, with Kansas State, TCU, who made the national college football playoffs, the national title game last year. What are we doing to bring back Rich Rodriguez? Are we living in a fantasy world that Rod's going to be the head coach and they're going to get the gang back together and bring Tony Gibson back as the defensive coordinator, and Pat White's going to be the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and Ryan Stanchek and Garen Justice are going to be the offensive line? Granted, I'd love that. I'd actually love a few of those pieces to be back on this, an assistant roles with the Mountaineers, namely Justice. Maybe even Pat White also at quarterback, because that name would ring true to all quarterbacks, I feel like, up and comers in recruiting. But it's just what are we talking about here? I mean, I miss the 2005, or even go back to that 2004 was a fun year, but disappointing at times. Those years, and Steve Slayton and Noel Devine and all of those unsung heroes on the defense who did so well for this program through those years. But The Great Gatsby, you can't repeat the past. You can't recreate it. And by trying to do this of bringing back Rich Rodriguez is just crazy. And jokingly, I've had this discussion with a couple of my neighbors, one a Penn State fan and one a Pitt fan, and they're all saying waiting for when West Virginia brings back Rich Rodriguez. And it's what could be that hurt? What could be worse than what you've gone through over the last 16 years? And maybe I'm just bitter, but you know what? If you don't see all of the cons and very few pros that come with hiring him back as the head coach, I don't know what to tell you. So please stop. Just for everybody's mental health and sanity, quit bringing back Rich Rodriguez up into conversations and social media posts, and every time Jacksonville State wins a game, and taking screenshots of him on the sidelines, and I missed that fire, and I missed that spot the ball type of offense and everything. Like, just stop. It's not happening with Rich Rodriguez. That sailed 16 years ago. So I'm done. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.